Hey, what's up, Thrive? It's me, Pastor Lucas, and I am excited to share with you this new series that we are in called Tough Questions. And we're going to be talking about topics that people may have about questions they may have about faith and about God. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to be asking the question, if God is so good, how come there's evil and suffering in the world? We're going to be talking about, can I trust the Bible? And today we're going to be asking the question is, how can I know that God exists? And maybe you ask this question, and I want to say up front that it's good to ask this question. Because part of developing a strong relationship with God involves these types of questions, involves these types of hard questions. And a relationship can only go as deep as the questions that you are willing to ask. So it's okay to ask these questions. It's part of growing a strong foundation in your relationship with God. Actually, in my relationship with my wife, Madeline, is that before we got married, before we decided to commit to each other, is that I had to ask these tough questions. I had to ask myself, am I willing to commit to Madeline, to fully trust Madeline? And Madeline had to ask me if she was willing and ready to fully trust me and commit to me. And these were the tough questions that we had to ask one another. And yeah, they were hard, and yeah, it was tough. But man, after we were able to solve those questions, to ask each other those questions, our relationship went to a deeper level. And the same thing in relationship with God is that you need to ask these questions. And if you're wondering, how can I know if God exists? How can I know if God is real today? That's a great question to ask. And you're not alone. Actually, King David in Psalms 14, chapter 14, verse 1, he says this. He says, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" See, even David, the person who God chose to lead the nation of Israel, who defeated the giant Goliath with a rock and a sling, that even David, who God chose, was wrestling with the same question. God, are you there? God, do you see me? God, where are you at, God? That even David also, at times in his journey, was asking the same question. So, like I said, if you're here today and you're asking these questions, it's totally okay, and I'm glad that you are. But let's look at a few verses here in the Bible that the Bible talks about with people who decide to ignore God. And Psalms 53 verse 1 says that the fool says in his heart that there is no God. Now, I don't want you to go around and calling people fools who don't believe in God, but there's more verses here in Romans chapter 1, verse 18 and 20. And this will be kind of the base verse in the next few weeks talking about this. Paul comes out and he's talking about people who are denying the truth of God, who they're suppressing the truth of God, or choosing to ignore the existence of God. And this is what the Bible says. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." Verse 19, "Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them." Verse 20, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, both his eternal power and divine nature, has been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuses." Well, Paul is saying here in verse 18 that God gets legitimately upset with us when we decide to ignore his truth. When we decide to ignore the clues that he has laid out through his divine power and nature that plainly shows that he clearly exists through the creation of the world, that God gets upset when we decide to ignore who he is. There's this famous guy, his name is F.F. Bruce, and he says this. He says that the knowledge of the true God is accessible, but man and woman close their minds to it instead of appreciating the glory of the Creator, contemplating the universe which he created. They give credit to things They give glory to things which belongs to God alone. For some people, it's easier to believe and give glory to the creation instead of believing, giving glory to the Creator. That's what Bruce is trying to get here, and that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. But before I show you a few clues that I believe that points to existing God, I want to start off by this, is that I can't force you, nor am I trying to force you, turn your wrist to believe in God. That what I'm just trying to do is I'm just trying to show you a few clues that you alone could decide and you alone could see, man, I fully believe in God and His existence. That I can't force you, that I'm not going to try to argue with you or debate with you. We're just simply going to look at the Bible and a few clues that points to the existence of God. So in this big question that we're trying to tackle today is that how can I know that God exists? Well, I'll give you a clue. And the first one is this. Is the first one called the clue of the beginning. Other people call it the first cause, or other people will call it the cosmological argument. We're just calling it the clue of the beginning. And the clue of the beginning main idea is this, that everything that begins to exist must have a cause. So the first thought is this, that something now exists, for example, our universe, and that this something cannot just spring out of nothing. I'll say it again. That something now exists, and that something cannot just spring from nothing. That the universe that is now made, it's created, the sun, the moon, the Milky Way, the galaxy, everything that was created came from somewhere. That this something cannot just come out of nothing, that this thing cannot just duplicate itself. That many people would say that a flash of energy or matter created the Big Bang, which led to the universe being created. Cool. But then we ask, where did the matter of energy come from? It cannot just create itself. It must have come from a higher being who has already existed, who was already there. There must have been something before the universe that lives outside of the universe that leads to a clue that there is a God, or at least something out there much bigger than you or I. Another thought on it is this. It's the second law of thermodynamics, which means that the universe is constantly expending all of its useful resources. So not trying to go too deep in science class here, but in a way to see that the universe has an ending. That there will be a time that the sun, the stars, the galaxy, that everything that we see will use all of its energy and burn out, use all of its resources and burn out. So the universe has an ending. And if the universe has an ending, that also means that it has a beginning. That it has a creation date, the moment that it started. If it has an end, then it has a beginning. So the question that comes to my mind is, who's the one who started it? Who was the one that pressed play on this beautiful symphony and everything started to play out and move in motion? That who was the one who spoke all of this into existence and everything started to play like a domino effect and everything started to evolve and happen around us? That who was the one who started it? You see that the universe is using all of its resources, all of its energy, it's expending all of it. Who's the master builder behind all of this? I think this is a clue that helps us to think that there is a God, that there is something greater. And I just want you to think about that there has to be something greater or someone greater to start all of this that lives outside of the universe. And a third idea on this is this one. It's a two-part, and I want you to think about this. The universe has a cause, right? The universe has a purpose. It has a role that it plays out. So if the universe has a cause, then the question arises, who caused the cause? That our universe has a cause, that everything that has been made has a purpose, everything has a role and an assignment. There is a cause for the sun, there's a cause for the bees in our world, there's a purpose to our design. Then who caused the cause? Then who made this happen? Who's the one who made it all? Think about it. This idea in the beginning, this clue, in a nutshell, and it means this: since the universe had a beginning, then something or someone caused it. And that someone, I believe, is God. That someone who made this all happen, I believe, is God. Now remember, I'm not trying to force you, I'm not trying to debate you, but I just want you to think for a moment. Stop and think about, contemplate around the world and the universe around you. That there was a universe that was made, and the universe can't just duplicate itself. That it has to be someone who lives outside of time and matter, someone outside of this universe who spoke all of this into existence. It has to be a great architect and a great builder, a mastermind, to be able to come up with all of this. To be able to plan everything out. And if you're here today and if you're wrestling, is there a God? I'll ask you just to consider that. Who was the one? Who caused the cause? It made everything happen. How can I know if God exists? Well, this is part one, and next week we'll be talking more about it and looking at some more clues that helps us to see that God exists, that there is a God, that this thing that you and I hopefully believe in is something real. It's something tangible. It's not that we just come into church just because we want to be a good person, or we're worshiping God just because our parents are making us, or maybe we're trying to be a good Christian because we're afraid of what might happen after this life. That our relationship with God is much deeper than that. That this thing that we believe in, it's real. It's tangible. You can feel it, you can see it, you can hear it. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. God bless you, and I'm excited to go on a journey with you. See you later, Thrive.